There's congestion. So I'll probably sneeze a few times and blow my nose a few times, but yeah, I'm all right. All things will pass. The plan is to continue from the first evening where we discussed how to, and is it possible, and if it is possible, how to enter into the eternal pastimes of Radha Krishna in Vrindavan, in addition to hearing about those wonderful pastimes, but actually enter into those pastimes eternally in the spiritual world. That's an elevated topic, and the text that discusses it is a text by Raghunath Das Goswami, one of the six Goswamis, one of the youngest of the six Goswamis. And in the first three verses of Mana Shiksha, or instructions to the mind, he covers the principles. He just points in the direction. It doesn't, in it's a short text, so it doesn't elaborate in the short text, but he points in the direction, and then commentary, and many personalities have made commentary that expand the principles. In the first verse, he writes something like this: if you would all aspire for eternal residence in Vrindavan with Radha and Krishna, and to serve their lordships eternally, then he gives two conditions. And the first of the two is this topic. The sada dambam hitva. Hitva means to give up, and dambam means pride. By all means, give up pride. Sada dambam hitva. And then the verse 3, he elaborates how that kind of consciousness is enhanced. And so yesterday, and now today, and then tomorrow, we're going to go further with that topic. Because the absence of pride isn't you become zero. That's impersonalism or voidism either. So that's not the teaching of bhakti. The teaching of bhakti is, who are you? And who are you is the tiny fragmental part of the Supreme meant for serving the Supreme. And so that's who you are. That's who we are. And realizing that is the condition of humility. And to realize that, there has to be a letting go of who we're not. Just like, here's a little device for changing slides, slide changer. And if I'm holding the slide changer and I want to take some water, I have to let go of the slide changer and then take the water. And then after drinking some water, put the water down and take the slide changer again. It's very simple in principle. So we have to receive, we have to let go. The letting go is false ego, the misconception of who I'm not. Thinking who I'm not is who I am. And who I am is far away. And that's the material condition. So leaving behind the material condition, hitva, sada, dambam hitva, adopting the position of humility. And this is a nice painting. This is one of the primary methods of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In Navadvip, you can see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is with hair on his head, which means it's before he accepted sannyas. So it's his youthful pastimes, and with Lord Nityananda and Advaita Acharya and others, engaging the devotees in Navadvip in ecstatic kirtan. And that's one expression of what humility is. That is, who we really are is we are eternal servants of the Supreme, and engaging in that activity, that's humility. And if there isn't humility, then I'm taking shelter of some other conception, commonly a false ego conception, and so many varieties. So I'm going to go through, the plan is, much like Raghunath Das Goswami does in the very first verse of Madhurya Kandamini. He points to three personalities who one should learn from. And he mentions three personalities: Rupa Goswami, Sarup Damodar, and Sanatana Goswami. Because they're not sadhakas, they're at the stage of perfection. And to give some idea of the perfection, we'll spend some time starting with Rupa Goswami. Amongst the six Goswamis, Rupa Goswami is especially important. Therefore, the followers of Lord Chaitanya are often called Rupa Anugas, or the followers of Rupa. Anuga, followers of Rupa. And not to imitate Rupa, but to understand the position. And from that position of abject humility, he was able to be intimately in Lord Chaitanya's association and understand from that platform of humility, he could understand things that others couldn't understand about Lord Chaitanya. And this in the process of devotional service. Lord Chaitanya instructed him, but in addition to instructing him, he said explicitly to other devotees, I empowered that Rupa Goswami can understand everything. Like, if there's the ocean, and he'll understand the ocean. Or Bhakti Rasa Sindhu, the ocean of Bhakti Rasa. He can understand the ocean, and sure enough, he understood it and wrote it in one book, and then a sequel to that book, and then other books following that sequel to that book. The title, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, is the full range of Bhakti Rasa. How does it work? What is it? And there are different mixtures of rasa. There's mixtures that are compatible, there's mixtures that are incompatible, and so forth and so on. So it's analytical in one sense, but he's sharing how it works. Bhakti rasa. So in one circumstance, I'm going to narrate two. In one circumstance, he was in Jagannath Puri, and as you see in the background, there's the Jagannath Puri temple. And at the time of Rath Yatra, Lord Chaitanya was right in front of the Rath Yatra cart, and dancing and dancing and dancing in a mood of ecstatic love. And he was unsteady, and all these different descriptions. And he kept repeating a phrase again and again and again. And the way the phrase is constructed, it sounds like a cinema song. Now, there's no movies at that time, but like a love story between a young boy and a young girl. Woo, woo, woo. And it sounds like that's what he was doing. And no one really understood, almost no one really understood what he was doing. But Rupa Goswami understood what he was doing. And what he was doing, in a manner that looked like it was mundane, he, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was relishing the love of Krishna for Radha and expressing it in the mood of Krishna feeling separation from Radha, so Vipralam above. And so, understanding the mood, Rupa Goswami wrote a verse that was in Sanskrit, and it revealed his understanding of Lord Chaitanya's mood. And one day, he wrote that stanza on a leaf, because there wasn't paper, so it was this. That was the system, a leaf. And he stuck the leaf in the thatched roof of his hut or his cottage, and he went to the sea to take his midday bath. While he was gone, Lord Chaitanya came to see him, and Rupa wasn't there, but he saw this leaf stuck in the roof. So he pulled the leaf out to read it. And when he read it, he understood that Rupa Goswami has understood my mind. He understood the mood of love that I was experiencing and expressing, but he wrote it in a way that it was very explicit, not indirect. The indirect was what he was saying in the public Rath Yatra festival. So he, Rupa Goswami, was being honored by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. How is it that you understood me? And Rupa Goswami gave the indication, simply by your mercy. That's the kind of, because of his humility and mode of service to Lord Chaitanya, he could understand him in various ways. There's another nice example. Another very nice example was the first meeting between the two brothers, Rupa and Sanatan, and Lord Chaitanya, was in Ramakeli, where they were both, along with their brother, engaged in government service. And they left. Rupa Goswami rendezvoused with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Prayag, and there in Prayag, Lord Chaitanya instructed him extensively on the bank of the Ashashvamedha Ghat, the celebrated place. And after instructing him, he said, "You go to Vrindavan and make Vrindavan your residence. After some time, residing in Vrindavan, you can come join me in Puri." So that's what he did. Rupa Goswami went to Vrindavan. So Ramakeli, Prayag, Vrindavan. And after staying in Vrindavan for nearly a year, he became very anxious to rendezvous with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so he started his journey overland. And he was such a devotee, Rupa was such a devotee, that he didn't have a computer and didn't have a system of taking notes. He could compose literature in his mind and hold it there. So as he was composing the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, he happened to pass through a place in Orissa, which was on the way to Puri, in a town called Satyabhamapur. Satyabhama is one of the wives of Krishna and Dwarka. Satyabhamapur. And in his dream in Satyabhamapur, Satyabhama appeared and instructed him, write 2 dramas. Krishna in Vrindavan, Krishna out of Vrindavan. And he didn't say anything to anybody. But then he began composing these 2 dramas. There's the names, and the translation is available. There are different translations of these books. Vidagdha Madhava Lita Madhava. Krishna in Vrindavan, Krishna out of Vrindavan. And then, after some time, he went to Puri. And he, Rupa, hadn't said anything to anybody about this dream, and he's now working on 2 manuscripts simultaneously. And Lord Chaitanya spoke to him saying, I hear that you're composing dramas and that there should be 2 dramas, Krishna in Vrindavan, Krishna out of Vrindavan. And with that, Rupa could understand that Lord Chaitanya is omniscient. I mean, it's just another confirmation of his realization because of his intimate mood of service, the mood of humility in service to the Supreme. And there's other examples. I'm going to give a few other examples. One of them, an associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is Kolavechar Sridhar. Kolavechar Sridhar was very poor. He lived in a cottage by the side of the Ganga, and it's ways of describing his poverty. His clothes had holes, the roof of his cottage had holes, and when it rained, he would just get wet because the roof had holes. But that's where he resided. And his income was banana trees provide banana leaves and banana flowers and so forth. So he lived near a grove of such banana trees, and he gathered the ingredients and then set the ingredients up along the side on a cloth, as Vaishyas would sometimes do, and sell his wares. And Lord Chaitanya more than liked, he had a profound love for Kolavechar Sridhar. So on a regular basis, if not daily, he would go to Kolavechar Sridhar's place and tease him. He would say, give me a fair price. I'm a Brahmana. Give me a fair price. And then he would barter, because Vaishyas liked to barter. So he would engage in extensive, it's described, how he would speak. And Kolavechar Sridhar eventually threw his hands up in the air and said, look, you give whatever you like. Please don't tease me in this way. And regularly the two would engage in this manner. Because Kolavechar Sridhar was taking an honest occupation, and it was not profitable, but that was his occupation. And he was not a grahastha. He just lived alone and lived very frugally. So one day, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, is described that Lord Chaitanya came and did the same thing that he would do regularly and started teasing him. And this way, that way, the other way. And Kolavechar Sridhar would not complain, but, please don't deal with me like this. You're an elevated person, and I'm a lowly person. Please, you can treat me however you like because you're the elevated person, but this is not nice. So in the course of that exchange, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided, as you see in the painting, that he showed his form of Krishna Balaram, the Kolavechar Sridhar. While in the foreground there's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a young boy. In the background there's Krishna Balaram. And then the Krishna Balaram were withdrawn. And there's Lord Chaitanya smiling at him. And he fainted. He then could understand this person that comes and teases me nearly every day, he's the Supreme Person. Because of his complete humility and devotion. And there's many other nice descriptions of his humility. Here's one, a nice description of his humility. There's a very celebrated pastime in Gaura Lila where for a whole year, the devotees of Lord Chaitanya would gather at the house of Srivas. And they'll say at the house of Srivas, it means there was different than the houses we have here in America. There was a wall, And then inside the wall was a extended family kind of living situation where this one, that one, the other one, they all lived together. Srivas, his wife, his children, their extended family, and so forth. And there was a nice altar of Lord Vishnu. And then the devotees, at Lord Chaitanya's request, every evening they would come together behind the locked gate of Srivas's place, and they have kirtan, and kirtan, and kirtan, and kirtan. And, kirtan gets loud sometimes. And the people outside that weren't allowed to come in because they weren't qualified, because they would create a disturbance, they were miffed. They were, what's going on inside there? And they're intoxicated, and they're wild, and they would say not pleasant things. But Lord Chaitanya continued anyways. So one evening, in a role reversal, instead of a devotee of Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu suddenly, in the midst of the kirtan, stopped the kirtan and went and sat right on the altar of the throne of Vishnu and said, "Worship me," in a commanding tone. And so they were very happy to worship him. They went to the Ganges, which is just across the street. They abhishek and this and that and the other thing, and paraphernalia, and they worshipped him as the personality of Godhead. It's called the Maha Prakash Leela. Very special pastime. Prakash means manifest, Maha Prakash. And one by one, Lord Chaitanya would call different devotees forward, and he would reveal something about their former life that they knew but nobody else knew. But he knew. And he would reveal that he understood them, and he knew them, and they knew private, confidential things. And it wasn't like violating confidentiality. He was just displaying his divinity, his omniscience. And in the course of that evening, one person, the next person, the next person, he looked around and said, "Where's Kolavechar Sridhar?" And he wasn't there. So Lord Chaitanya said, "Go find him." And where he resided was, there's a path along the side of the Ganga, a footpath, and follow the footpath upstream, and you'll hear someone chanting very loudly. It's dark. There's no street lights and anything like that, but you'll hear his chanting. He would chant aloud. So just follow his voice, and then bring him here. And so they did, and they brought Kolavechar Sridhar, and Kolavechar Sridhar was mesmerized and deeply indebted, and he fell at Lord Chaitanya's feet, because he had these exchanges where he understood, as he was doing this particular evening, that he's the personality of Godhead, displaying his divinity instead of his mood of a bhakta. And a very nice exchange between the two, based upon the same point. The purity and simplicity and humility of Kolavechar Sridhar. And there's another book that some of you may know, some of you may not know. It's a book about Murari Gupta. Gupta in Bengal is the name of a physician, a Vaidya. And that's what he did for his occupation. So he was a physician, and he was a very intimate associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At the same time, he was scholarly, and in his scholarship, by age, he was a little older. Not terribly older, but a little older than Nimai Pandit when he was still Nimai Pandit, before he had taken sannyas, when he left Navadvip. So there was a loving exchange between the two of them that went something like this. And this is he, Murari Gupta, was understood by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as of the same mood as Hanuman. He was a Ram Bhakta. And so he, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, encouraged Murari Gupta, you're such a devout follower of Ramachandra, you read Ramayana every day. Why not take up the chanting of the name of Krishna? Because, and gave reasons, the sweetness of Krishna's name, etc., Krishna Bhakti, glorifying Krishna Bhakti. Now, he's younger. Nimai Pandit was younger, and Murari Gupta was older, but although older, younger, he understood, he had a relationship with the younger, that he had great respect for him. So he tried. He came back the next day, both Nityananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or Nimai Pandit, and was crying and crying and crying. He said, I was up all night long. I wanted to fulfill your instruction, but I can't give up the lotus feet of Lord Ramachandra. I can't do it. I'm attached. So please change the instruction. Please modify the instruction. So they smiled, appreciating the depth and fixity of his devotion to Lord Ramachandra as Hanuman. How can Hanuman worship someone other than Ram? No way. That was his mood. One time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to visit, because Murari Gupta was a physician, and he went to visit his home. His home was very near to Mahaprabhu's home, or Jagannath Mishra was closer to the river, and Murari Gupta's home was a little further from the river, but very close by the two homes. So he went to visit him. And when he went to visit him, he manifested a form of Lord Varaha. This is a nice BBT painting of that pastime. He lifted a pot on his tusk like the Lord Varaha rescuing the earth from the bottom of the Garbhodak ocean, and lifted and made loud noises as one might expect to hear from a Varaha, a boar. And Murari Gupta saw all this and heard all this, and he fell to the ground and fainted. And then Lord Chaitanya quickly withdrew that Varaha form and showed his other form in this world, transcendental pastime, in exchange for someone who is truly devoted, but devoted in a different way. And there's another nice story. It's not in something that's commonly known in ISKCON. There's Chaitanya Bhagavat and Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yes? There's another book called Chaitanya Mangala. And Chaitanya Mangala is another biography of Lord Chaitanya. The author is Lokanath. And it's Chaitanya Mangala. There's a very interesting description. The very interesting description is Murari Gupta was an ardent worshipper of Ram. At the same time, Murari Gupta, a Brahmana by birth and by his quality, but by profession he was a physician, he had many students. This place of Navadvip was a place of higher learning. So there are many, many, many persons that had higher learning, and Murari Gupta was one. And one of the inclinations that Murari Gupta had when he was young was an inclination towards impersonalism, or Yoga Vishishta. Yoga Vishishta. It's a little tricky exactly what that is, but it's Yoga Vishishta. And he liked expounding on the teachings of the Vedas. Sarva Brahma Idam Sarvam Brahma Idam. Huh? Yeah, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. There we go. Thank you. And Soham. And he spoke on these two verses elaborately. And he, being older than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Nimai Pandit, he would do so waving his arms in the air and with a group of students following him around, teaching Yoga Vashishta or impersonalism. And Nimai followed him and mimicked him. He was gesturing as he was gesturing and waving his hands in the air and basically mocking him purposely to bring him to the point of humility and submission. And Murari Gupta just ignored it. He went on as if Nimai Pandit wasn't doing these things, and he carried on. They had some exchange, a little confrontation. Why are you teaching these things? You're a Ram Bhakta. And Ram Bhaktas are not impersonalists. And some exchange. And so one day, Nimai said, I'll teach you a lesson. And that was it. So he just disappeared from Murari Gupta's house. Murari Gupta's house is very near to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's house. So at a certain time of day, young brahmanas, they have a practice that they offer rice and ghee and other items to their Shalagram Shila at a particular time, and then after offering, they sit down to have a meal. And in this Chaitanya Mangala, here's a nice drawing, Nimai just showed up while he is in the midst of having his rice, and he urinated on the rice. And Murari Gupta is like, what? And Nimai said, you're teaching Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. It's all one. So what does it matter, this or that or the other? What's the problem? You don't believe your own teaching, Murari Gupta. So there's things that are to be done, things that are not to be done, and you don't make that distinction. And he was humbled by, the younger of the two, Murari Gupta and Nimai Pandit. There's many, many, many nice examples. Here's one of the many nice examples. This is very ancient times where Prahlad Maharaj is identified in that 7th canto Bhagavatam as the best of all devotees. Bhaktanam Sarvesham Pratirupa Drik. So he, Prahlad, wasn't thinking himself very great, but Lord Nrsingadev appeared for him, and when they tried, the demigods and Lord Brahma and this one, that one, tried to pacify Lord Nrsingadev, nothing worked. He was roaring and carrying on. So they thought, let us encourage Prahlad. So that's this painting, and by walking up the steps and falling at the feet of Lord Nrsingadev, because of that simplicity, purity, and humility of Prahlad, the Lord his mood shifted. He withdrew his anger and exhibited something else. And a wonderful exchange between the two. Then another nice example I like very much is Sudama Brahman. Sudama Brahman, it was a person involved in Krishna's childhood pastimes. As you know, when Krishna was in Vrindavan, he didn't go to school. And when he went to Mathura, Mom and Dad wanted him to go to school. But one nice Kshatriya boy doesn't go to school. So they had him engaged in Upanayana so that he could engage in his studies. There's details and details, but Krishna himself personally selected their teacher, Sandipani Muni, for different reasons. Without all the detail, there's important reasons. So it's remote, so that it wouldn't be in everybody's face. And he, Sandipani Muni, had a prior disposition towards Lord Shiva worship, and he, Krishna, wanted to move him from Lord Shiva worship to Krishna worship. But so that was part of his plan. So he went to where Sandipani Muni was residing. And nearby, in Porbandar, was another Brahmana. So Krishna was in a Kshatriya family, as was his brother, Balaram. And Sudama was in a Brahmana family. But the teacher accepted both, and part of their procedure for young men under the training of a teacher is they would engage in very simple tasks. So on one occasion, there was an assignment to gather wood for the yajna. And they went into the forest, and as you see from the painting, there's a lot of water all around. So it rained so heavily that the place was flooded. So they ended up staying in the forest because it was dangerous going anywhere else. And in course of time, when the boys didn't come back, Sudama and Krishna didn't come back from the forest, Sandipani Muni took his students with him and went in the forest, looked for him, found Krishna and Sudama. And so he brought them back and, treated them with great respect and so forth and so on. So there's this history of the two, Krishna and Sudama Brahman. Fast forward, after some time, Krishna had become situated in Dwarka. And Dwarka is not too far from the home of Sandipani Muni. Not too far from the home of Sudama. And the wife of Sudama saw the emaciated condition of his body, because her husband, a Brahmana, was particularly austere by his nature. And he was fine, but she wasn't, because she saw him skin and bones, and she didn't like it. So sometimes wives will try to persuade their husband to do something their husband doesn't want to do. And so she tried to persuade, you have a dear friend, Krishna. He's just a little distance away in Dwarka. Just go to your dear friend and request something so you don't have to live in the destitute condition. And he was happy, although he was destitute. So, nagging wife can sometimes prevail. So he finally agreed. Okay, I'll go see Krishna. And besides, not just ask for something, but I'll get to be with Krishna after such a long period of time. So there's a very beautiful description of his attempt to make the journey from Porbandar to Dwarka. And as he's walking and walking and walking, he's meditating on seeing his dear friend Krishna. And as is the custom, when you go to visit someone, a great personality in particular, you're the guest, you bring a gift. But he was so poor that they didn't have any gift. So his wife went to nearby homes and gathered some broken rice and put the broken rice in a cloth, and the broken rice, as you see in the painting here, was put over his shoulder. And there's Krishna up on the throne, and when Krishna sees, he recognizes him immediately, this skinny Sudama, and he gets off the throne and comes and embraces him. And Krishna's really happy to see him. Now Krishna doesn't say, "Why have you come? Please tell me." It's understood he came because he wanted something. And if the wanted something wasn't for himself, it was for his wife. She wanted something. She wanted that her husband not be in squalor. So immediately, Krishna did what Krishna likes to do. He likes to honor his devotee. Here is Rukmini. The palace that he went to was Rukmini's palace, the goddess of fortune, Rukmini. And here, Krishna is offering various nice edibles for his dear friend. No, Sudama is not so much interested in the nice edibles. He's interested in his relationship with Krishna. So here's a nice, very nice painting, BBT painting. There's Rukmini down beside Krishna. There's some other queens or ladies in waiting in the background. And the beautiful painting, Krishna is simply looking at the eyes of Sudama. Sudama is simply looking in the eyes of Krishna. And secondary is this washing of his feet, because that's a ritual that is customary for a brahmana to be received by a kshatriya. So Krishna did that, and he was very happy. And Sudama was not so much interested in the washing of his feet. He was interested in the relationship with Krishna, the intimate relationship. So there's a number of paintings indicating the same, the water basin and so forth and so on. And in the end, there's some exchange. Krishna wants to know, why did you come here? Is there something I can do for you? And he evades the question. He doesn't want to directly answer the question. And the reason he doesn't want to answer the question is because he doesn't want to come before Krishna as a beggar. Although he's destitute, and that's what his wife wants. He just not necessarily opulence, but something, so he doesn't have to live in squalor. And a very nice scene. I'm sure most of you know the scene. Krishna sees this little bag or cloth that have the broken rice. And he looks at the bag and said, "Oh, you brought some gift for me." And he snatches the bag and starts to eat it with the contents. And Rukmini, seeing him eat this inferior quality rice, grabs his hand and basically saying, this is not fit for you. But Krishna wants, because it's not just the quality, it's the love and devotion with which it's offered. Krishna likes. And then the time came for departure, and in the time that came for departure, Sudama, the Brahmin, is thinking, Krishna is so kind. He didn't ask me, why have you come? Because I'm a Brahmin. If he asked me why I had come, I'd have to tell him I have to be truthful. And if I told him the reason that I came, I'd be embarrassed. So Krishna didn't want to embarrass me. He didn't ask me. But he knew. So Krishna is so kind. Krishna is so kind. All the way back, the kindness of Krishna was in the forefront of his mind. And what to speak of that exchange in Dwarka with Krishna, loving exchange. And when he got back to his home in Porbandar, he was very surprised. He didn't see his home. Instead of the home, he saw a palace. And coming out of the palace was someone who he didn't recognize. That was his wife. Because she was decorated in fine ornaments and jewels and this and that, and, careful scrutiny, he understood that's my wife, isn't it? So he asked her, what happened? And she then said, oh, I just assumed that you had asked, and this is what Krishna did in reciprocation. Krishna provided a very nice place with opulence and this and that, so you won't have to be in squalor anymore. And Sudama then thought, Krishna is very kind. Because that's the foundation of the relationship between a humble Vaishnava and Krishna. He is kind to such devotees. And the chapter ends, or the discussion on this pastime is found in 3rd canto. If one makes friendship with Krishna, one will never be cheated, and he will get all help needed. So that's the consequence of humility in a loving relationship with Krishna. If that's the starting point, then something flows from that starting point. And that's the topic. So, let's see if I can go back to the beginning. Yeah, profiles of humility. If we want to know, or we want to cultivate humility, it's good to have role models or examples. What does it look like? And there's different what it looks like examples. And there's different personalities in Krishna's Leela and Lord Chaitanya's Leela that had these characteristics. And in all circumstances, the Krishna is at the center, and he reciprocates with that mood that they have. The humility means service. In a insignificant, from the insignificant position to the significant, to the supreme. Okay. Any comments or questions? And pardon my congestion, it's a little uncomfortable.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, one comment, although I was still thinking about it, that from devotee side, it is humility. But Krishna's side, it looks like that. I could be wrong, but from Krishna's side, it's just love. Because in Sudama Brahmana's story, we see that, humility we understood as like being situated in our real identity of service to Krishna.
Yeah.
And here we see that actually Krishna is serving Sudama Brahman.
Yeah.
He's washing his feet.
Yeah.
But still, Sudama Brahman has not left his position of humility, and Krishna has not left his position of being the Supreme Lord and position of love for his devotee.
Right.
So this exchange is so sweet that even Sudama is not feeling any awkwardness, because he's just being humble, and he's also in absorbed in love of Krishna, what Krishna is exhibiting. So he's kind of flooded with love of Krishna. So this was very endearing, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much. And all these examples are really, very, very wonderful examples, although very high profiles. But yes, we have now, we have the understanding at least and appreciation for these personalities. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Very well.
very nice stories. Especially, I understand the personal relationships between Sudama and Krishna and other characters. And when you mentioned about this Sarvam Kal Vidam Brahma,
Yeah.
and from Bhagavad Gita study also, we understand we are all together with Prakriti, part and parcel of Bhagavan,
Yeah.
God. Then when we saw this peculiar example of Gupta, and this was a little bit hard to understand. My question is, how do we correctly understand what is meant by Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma?
A more complete definition or picture or the position of Brahman is Parabrahman. And many persons don't have the Parabrahman picture. They have the Brahman picture. And so there's issue for those that don't have the Parabrahman conception. The Brahman is part of the Parabrahman. So there are those that don't have that. For those persons, then their understanding is different. Their understanding is all there is Brahma. Brahman. Everything is Brahman. I'm Brahman, you're Brahman, it's all one. So a more complete, depending upon the teacher that you have, it's correct, and then go further, go further. Go further means there's the super soul, and then there's Bhagavan, Para, Brahman. And they're not inconsistent. They're just more complete, less complete, more complete. So there's the dissension between those that hold this view and those that hold that view. There's lengthy philosophical depictions of that issue, like exhaustive. But the principle is quite simple. Brahman, Parabrahman, and Bhagavan. Atma, Paramatma, Bhagavan. And all the other two rest on the one. Supposing one doesn't have the Bhagavan conception straight, then they may go to the Brahman conception. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma means. They'll fill in the blanks. This is what it means. We're all Brahman. Everything is Brahman. There's nothing but Brahman, because that's reality. And Brahman Satya Jagat Mithya. That's, an interpretation of that teaching. Okay? It gets really elaborate, but so I'm not going into the elaborate, just speaking simple.
Hare Krishna, Guru
Hare Bol.
Maharaj. I had a question from class yesterday.
Okay.
In the story with Dronacharya and Ekalai.
The story of?
With Dronacharya and Ekalai. Why did Ekalai just cut his thumb off as soon as Dronacharya asked, even if he wasn't his disciple?
Even if he wasn't?
His disciple.
Well, the part of the narration that I left out, I should have included. Now here, when Arjuna saw this dog with 5 arrows in his mouth, he traced where that dog had come from, and he found Ekalavya. And he asked Ekalavya, "Where'd you learn this?" From Dronacharya. And Dronacharya had said to Arjuna that no one will be superior to you. But here's a person claiming that he's a disciple of Dronacharya doing something that Arjuna didn't know how to do. So he went to Dronacharya and said, "What's going on?" Dronacharya said, "Please bring me to this person." So he did. And then, where did you learn this? From you? Really? Okay. Then you're my student. I have, so then the dakshin. The dakshin was his thumb. Now, your question specifically is what? In that context, is there a further question?
My question was like, why did he just like give his thumb? Like,
Why did he what?
why did he just give his thumb? Did he have a choice to not listen?
Your voice is really soft.
Like, why did he just give his thumb?
Why did Ekalavya surrender his thumb? There are two views, and I mentioned it yesterday. Some persons say, just see the degree of surrender of Ekalavya. He's cut off his thumb because he was asked by his guru to cut off his thumb. Just see the degree of surrender. And Bhaktisiddhanta says that's a wrong understanding. Yes, there was some surrender, but the surrender in tamasa, in the mode of ignorance, because he was using the whole process of developing Dhanurved without the teacher willingly instructing him. Rather, the teacher willingly said no. So he went ahead anyways. So he was not qualified. And Drona understood he was not qualified. That's why he didn't accept him. So the reason he gave his thumb is because Drona asked him. And he was exhibiting a display of submission, but it really wasn't submission. Because if there was really submission, then he wouldn't have become his followers, forming a murti of Dronacharya and worshipping the murti of Dronacharya. So there was something in mode of ignorance. Worship, just like the class midday today, the chapter 17, divisions of faith, and some persons worship this way, that way, that way. So in persons in the mode of ignorance, he was in the mode of ignorance. And yes, he surrendered his thumb in the mode of ignorance. And yes, he began the worship in the mode of ignorance. Because that's the mode of nature that he was within. And he was strong. As the chapter 17 says, some persons, they don't follow the Vedas. They know what the Vedas say, but they don't follow what the Vedas say. And then they make up their own. And that's what he did. Ekalavya. His teacher said no, and he said yes. And developed skills. Practice and practice and practice. Some persons, Ekalavya is one, they have strong faith in something that's not Vedic. And they'll sacrifice themselves for that something that's not Vedic. Just take wars in our contemporary society. Somebody's the leader, this leader, that leader, and somebody lines himself up behind this leader, that leader, and they sacrifice their life. Is it Vedic? No way. Do they sacrifice their life or their thumb or something? Yes. Strong conviction. Tamasic or Rajasic, but not Sattvic. The Sattvic element is, even at great risk, they'll still do, like cutting off his thumb. Now, we don't hear what happened after that. The assumption is he couldn't use his military skill anymore because he didn't have his thumb anymore. So there was some submission that some people read, just see how surrendered. Two things. He just worshipped the deity, and by worshiping the deity, look what he got. And number two, he surrendered his thumb, and just see the degree of surrender. But the answer from Bhaktisiddhanta is tamasic. There's some result, but a tamasic result. Because you have something that's of value, and you misapply it because you don't have character, you can create a big mess for yourself and for others. And that's the world in which we live. Ekalava is an example. So your question is, why did he sacrifice his thumb? Because he had that kind of spirit. And because of that kind of spirit, it's tamasic. He sacrificed his thumb, or sacrificed his life, or sacrificed something. And some people are like that.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah. You want to add? Sure. Here comes the microphone.
I just want to add that he gave up his right thumb and then he practiced, Ekalavya practiced with his left thumb. He was actually part of the Kaurava army for Duryodhana. That's what I want to add. Thank you.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
This very good discussion about Drona, Ekalavya. So, it's not beneficial for anyone to live in the mode of tamasic mode, ultimately, but why would one live in that mode?
Why would one?
Live in that mode of tamasic?
Oh, they like it. Yummy. Passion. They like it. It burns like fire, but they like it.
Yeah, that is same my question. Why?
You know, look around. Look at how people live in the world. Why do people live in the world the way they live in the world? Rajasic. And there's the principle of faith and worship is part of their life. They worship whoever they worship. You'll fill in some blanks. A sports hero, a political hero, a cause, something. And they dedicate themselves to that something. So why do they do that? It's yummy. They get some taste from that. The taste for you or for someone in the mode of goodness is not yummy. Something else. They see beyond, the buzz of the senses and sense objects, and they see that where that train is going. They see its misery. And so they don't take part because they have sattva, they have knowledge. So then that person is guided by knowledge in the mode of goodness. And then there's the Vaishnava that's guided by what's pleasing to Krishna, whatever that is. Whatever that is, that's what I want. Clear?
Correct, but I think everyone follows different. Is it because of their
Vasanas, their tendencies.
tendencies carried from the
Yeah.
birth?
Yes.
Okay.
And is it possible that tendencies can change? Yes.
Yeah. By association.
By association and practice and cultivation and to do the do's and avoid the don'ts and slowly. Second, something that was not my conditioned nature becomes my first nature. The first nature replaces the conditioned nature by practice and association. Sadhana, bhakti. It takes time, but that's an outcome.
Krishna Maharaj. The Sada Tambam Hitva.
Yeah.
And thinking about the subtle pride which lives in us. Is it fair to say that the way to overcome it is through experience and devotional service and self-introspection and mercy?
Yeah.
That one can.
There are degrees and stages, but yes. It doesn't happen instantly, but it happens based on proper principles, applying proper principles, then transformation is possible from the conditioned to free from conditioning, or the pure state, or gradually through the lower modes to the upper modes, and then transcendence. There's different ways of describing it, different experiences for different persons, but that's where the bhakti cultivation goes. Okay, we're done. You have something? One.
I was curious to know, Maharaj, why Murari Gupta was speaking impersonal philosophy if he's a Ram Bhakta.
Why? Because it was his disposition. Why did Hanuman have disposition of serving Ram? Ask Hanuman. He's in that Hanuman mood. But why does somebody that's a Ram Bhakta have Ram Bhakti? It's their mood.
He was speaking about impersonal philosophy, so that's what I'm trying to
Okay,
understand.
that's separate. Sometimes a less mature Vaishnava, and that was Murari Gupta as a young man or a young boy with his students. He entertained ideas that weren't Vaishnava. He entertained ideas that were Yoga Vishishta, impersonal. And, because that's what's around. When that's around, you learn it. There's teachers, and they give these teachings.
So when Lord Chaitanya showed his Varaha form, that time his bhakti was matured.
Well, exactly the chronology of when he showed that Varaha form and what happened after, likely yes, because this other pastime from Chaitanya Mangala, it says specifically, Nimai was around 5.
Yeah.
And he had love for Murari Gupta. Murari Gupta had love for him and Nityananda. So they had exchanges of love.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, here comes the microphone.
I got reminded of the pastime in the Rajasya Yajna where Krishna actually receives the guests and he washes their feet. So I was remembering Krishna's humility actually in doing that. And I also was remembering Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He was so erudite a scholar, and he took initiation from Srila Gaur Krishnadas Babaji, who was apparently illiterate. So that's what I wanted to mention. Thank you.
While illiterate, he couldn't, according to what Prabhupada says, he couldn't write his name. That much illiterate. But this super erudite person accepted him as his guru. So he understood the conclusions of the scriptures without assiduous study. By some innate tendency. You want to add something?
I just had a quick question, Guru Maharaj.
Okay, go ahead.
The definition of humility given in verse 13.8 is that one should not be anxious to receive satisfaction by others. So is that the only definition of humility given by Srila Prabhupada?
No.
Could you
There are many.
give some examples if possible?
You want some other examples?
Yeah.
Another very simple example. God is good, God is great, and I'm very tiny. Therefore, because I'm part and parcel of the all good, all great, I'm meant for service. That's humility. Bhakti, the same as the topic yesterday evening, bhakti is preceded by humility. So I understand who I am. Part of the Supreme, meant for his service. That's one other, and there's many others. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.